Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about in-depth interview in qualitative research. Okay, the discussion questions are: first is what is in-depth interview, and then we go to the second one, when is in-depth interview used. Number 3, checklist before interviewing. Number 4, what are attributes of a good researcher. And number 5 is about data recording. So that's the topic that we are going to cover this afternoon. And later, next week, we're going to continue with our discussion questions from number 6 to number 10. Let's go to question number 1. Question number 1 is, what is in-depth interview? Interviewing is the most common form of data collection in qualitative research. Dexter, 1970, described in-depth interview is a conversation with a purpose. And the purpose is to find out what is in and on someone else's mind. Okay, so that's the explanation of what is in-depth interview. In-depth interview is a conversation with a purpose, and the reason is to find out what is in and on someone else's minds. So that's why we conduct the interview. Question number 2, when is in-depth interview used? Interviewing is used when, first, we cannot observe behaviors, feelings, or how people interpret the world around them. Number 2, we are interested in the past events that are difficult to replicate. That means difficult to do it again. Yeah, difficult to reconstruct what have happened in the past. Number 3, it is the best way to get the data. And number 4, it is the only way to get the data. So that is the importance of in-depth interview. The reason we do in-depth interview is to get access to the data by interviewing them, by asking them questions, and after that, from the answers given, we try to probe further. Yeah, so interviewing is used when we cannot observe the behavior, the feelings. Number 2, when we are interested in the past event, but it is difficult for us to repeat what has happened in the past. Number 3, it is the best way to get data. And number 4, interviewing is the only way to get the data. Okay, now we go to number 3, checklist before interviewing. Before we interview, there is several things that you need to bear in your mind. First is you have to sharpen your skill through pilot testing. Secondly, yeah, what about the interview guide or the protocol? Interview guide and the protocol is the it means the questions, yeah, the list of questions you're going to ask your interviewees. And number 3 is to understand what good data is. Okay, regarding the pilot testing, yeah, in quantitative, the purpose is to test the instrument. In quali, the purpose is first is to practice interview, because you did not have any experience before, so it is something like to situate yourself in interview situation. Secondly is to familiarize research. Okay, this is a new to you, and you try to familiarize yourself with data collection, with how to interview them and so on. Number 3 is to test questions. you have drafted your interview questions in your protocol, but you are yet to test it out. Okay, through pilot testing, you can test the questions, whether the questions are appropriate or not, or you have other ways of asking questions. Number 4 is to find themes that emerge. Okay, so one of the reason why you do pilot testing is to train yourself in analyzing the data, how to find themes that emerge. So that's need a lot of practice. Okay, now we go to interview guide. Yeah. Okay, interview guide is a term by Merriam. Creswell call it interview protocols. Yeah, either interview guide or interview protocol. The meaning is the same. List of questions. Yeah, list of questions. So you put a list of questions in the interview guide or interview protocol. So interview guide is the interview list of questions that a researcher intends to ask. There are no rules to determine which question should go first, but normally factual, socio-demographic type questions can be asked in order to get the interview started. So we asked with the demographic questions first. Sensitive questions such as age, sex, and income could be asked at the end of the interview. Okay, and neutral and descriptive information can be best asked at the beginning of an interview. Okay, so this is the way to structure the interview. So the phase 1 is the warm-up. So probably you can ask small questions in order to get you familiarized with the interviewee. Yeah, and then you go to phase 2 to explore discussion points. Okay, now you are starting to go into the real issue. And then we go to phase number 3, core discussion. So, okay, this is for you to ask the serious question, the actual questions. Yeah, so this is the critical period where you ask, you know, the questions that you're going to ask. And then after we finish, we go to phase number 4, which is summarizing. So you summarize what you have found, yeah, and checked by your co-researchers or your colleagues. Okay, number 3, you must understand what constitutes good data. Okay, so in order to get a good data, you have to understand what good data is. Yeah, if the records are rich, thick, and dense, yeah, offering enough details to allow someone to comprehend the situation or understanding the setting without asking additional questions. Yeah, okay, so good data, you have a good data, and after that you have to look for some information by asking questions and so on. Okay, and then you get the information. Okay, and because the information is so detailed, so they are good. Okay, and then we go to number 4 now. For number 4, researchers attribute. So you have to understand these are among the things that we need in order to have a good researcher. First is a tolerance for ambiguity. Secondly, sensitivity to context and data. Number 3, a good communication skills. Number 4, active and reflexive. And then bracketing. Okay, we go to number one first. Okay, what do we mean by tolerance for ambiguity? Yeah. So whenever you get a vague understanding from the interviewee, you have to get more exact information, asking them questions, make clarification, and so on. For example, you ask cool refers to temperature or a person. Yeah. Okay. So probably before that, yeah, the informant says something about the cool, for example. Yeah. So we have to understand because probably it means something else. Yeah. So is it refer to temperature or a person? Okay, tolerance for ambiguity also means the ability to hold two or more interpretations and know which interpretation is merited by the data. Okay, so in order to overcome, because you have to know exactly, you have to remove the indecisiveness, the uncertainty. Okay, so you need to ask questions, not just the question that I have provided, but also questions from outside UKM, for example. Okay, to overcome, you do probing, asking question, and reconstruct your own understanding. Question number 2, sensitivity to context and data. Okay, a good researcher must be sensitive to the surrounding. Yeah, so you have to understand the context and also the data. In order to do that, you have to be intimate with the setting. Having intimate understanding of the setting as a way to eliminate problem in which presence of researcher change behavior of informant. Okay, how to do that? You do that first through immersion in literature. So that means you have to read a lot of literature in order to be informed of the situation right now. Number 2, you have to build rapport with participant. Yeah, it is important for you uh, get uh, uh, to gain the trust of participants. Why? Because if you have the trust, and then uh, we can get the communication going. Okay, um, the people, the interview that we ask, they are willingly to answer the questions. Okay, this also means intimate understanding. Okay, you read your literature in order to understand more. You also need to build a rapport with your respondents in order to deeply understand their culture, their behavior, and so on. Okay, this is the analogy in which we have intimate understanding. Yeah, just read the interpretive part. The interpretive fisherman enters the water, establish rapport with the fish, and swims with them, striving to understand their experience of being in the water. Okay, in order to be a good communication skill, in order to have good communication skills, okay, just remember what have been said by these quotations by Patton. Blessed are the skilled questioners, for they shall be given mountain of words to ascend. Blessed are the wise questioners, for they shall unlock the hidden corridors of knowledge. Blessed are the listening questioners, for they shall gain perspective. Okay. Okay, so in order to do that, we have to understand, because when we interview the other people, it involves three things. First is the spoken words, the verbal language, yeah, and then uh, concern about voice, the tone, and 55% is about body language, yeah. So body language is very, very important. In order to speak clearly, you have to make your body language incongruent with your verbal language. Yeah. For body language, we have the 3 C's triangle of body language. Yeah. So you have to know the context. You have to know the clusters. You have to know the congruence. Okay, so the context, yeah, in order to for you to have an appropriate body language, you have to know the context and also to read, others' body language. So you have to see within the context. You have to see uh, in clusters and also congruent. So in terms of context, for example, if you are cold, of course, you are crossing your arms like this. Yeah. So crossing your arms probably means negative body language, but because of the temperature is so low, so you need to warm up your body. So that's why you do the arms crossing. Yeah. So you have to see the context. Yeah. It's not necessarily means that you are not very good in communication. You do not want, to interact with others, but it is more because of context. For clusters, you cannot just see one thing and after that right away you say, that person has a negative attitude and so on. Yeah. So in order to judge that, you must have clusters. So that means, uh, if you see the example, it's not just one example, so probably 2 or 3 times, you see that signs. So in that case, you can say, the person has this attitude, that attitude, and so on. Okay, and the next thing is about congruence. Yeah, so between the verbal and body language, it must be in congruence. Yeah. Okay, for example, if you say, "I'm not angry," yeah, but your voice is showing that you are angry. So that means there is, within verbal language and body language, it is not incongruent. Yeah. Okay. So people got confused when they see this. Okay. For number 3, you must have communication skills in interviewing. Yeah. Okay. First is know how to listen and really listening. So you have to prepare yourself mentally in order to listen very, very carefully. Yeah. Okay. Why? Because you got to listen to the answers, and after that, you got to pick a few words. Yeah. Because the keyword is very, very important, and you can ask the probing questions. Yeah. Based on the initial informations that you get from the informant. Okay, number 2, remembering what people said to you. This is also important, yeah, because you cannot, for example, replay your tape, yeah, at that time, yeah. So you have to remember what was said before in order for you to ask questions, yeah, to make notes. Okay, number 3, achieving a good balance between talking and listening. So that means, okay, so basically a good balance between talking. So you talk and then you listen. Okay, you cannot just talk. Okay, and you do not give the interviewee the time, uh, to talk. Yeah. Okay, so a good balance between talking and listening. Okay, number 4 is observing, picking up verbal and non-verbal cues. So you have to see the body language, the cues that's shown by your informant in order for you to understand more about them. Another thing is about how to record the conversation. Yeah, so there are practicalities in note taking and using tape recorder. Yeah, so is it good to do note taking, or you must have, yeah, a special day in order for everyone to to enjoy it. Okay, for communication skills, the analogy is like peeling an onion. Listening is like peeling an onion. Active listening means peeling away the different layers that hide the true meaning. Okay, so you see, okay, this is about listening. Yeah, listening is not just one layer. Listening is based on different layers. So listening is like peeling an onion. Yeah, active listening means peeling away all the different layers that hides the true meaning. Okay, this is also important for you to bear in your mind communication skill in listening. The reality of the other person is not what he reveals to you, but in what he cannot reveal to you. Okay. Therefore, if you would understand him, listen not in what he says, but rather in what he does not say. Yeah. Okay. So sometimes for other people to understand us, what they have to do is to see the body language, to see the non-verbal cues in order to understand more. Okay, and the researcher also must be active and reflexive. According to Mason, yeah, active and reflexive is conceptualized as active and reflexive in the process of data generation. Okay, according to Flick, it is researchers' reflections on the field. Okay, this is a very, very heavy one because you have to be active and at the same time reflexive. Yeah. Okay, it means that, whenever your interviewee give certain information, you detect that, there are some questions regarding that. There are things that you need to bear in your mind regarding that, and so on. Okay, so in terms of reflective and reflexive practice, these are not the same. We have reflection on and reflection in. Reflection on is about a stepping back, a rational and reasoning being with an inner consciousness, making logical sense of an outside world. So that's what we call reflection on, stepping back, yeah, and see what happened to your mosque. Reflexivity in, it is a living in. We are always selves in relation to others, both shaping and shaped by other social world. Okay, for active and reflexive also, interviewer and respondent must have interaction. Yeah, a good respondent, as understood by anthropologists and sociologists, as an informant, one who understands the culture, but is also able to reflect on it and articulate for the researchers what is going on. Okay, and the last thing, the epoch or bracketing. Okay, epoch or bracketing means the researcher is to suspend his or her judgment. In phenomenology tradition, the researcher is to set aside all preconceived expectations to best understand the experiences of the participants in the study. Yeah. Okay. Interviewers enough distance to ask questions. So that means that so whenever you do the interview, you have to make sure that uh, you are not in that situation. So you have to go away. Yeah. So you have to find some other place or some quiet place in order for you uh, to analyze the result. Okay. Interviews enough distance to ask questions. That means not to show assumptions. Yeah. So you have to understand our own enough uh, enough distance idea or questions. And regarding number 5 is about recording. Which way of recording is considered the best one? Yeah. So uh, I'm going to discuss two things. First is data recording mode, and secondly, ways to record interview. For data recording mode, they are very along two dimensions. First is fidelity, and secondly, the structure. Okay, so you see that there are two big words here. First one is fidelity and second one is structure. So you have to achieve the balance between the two. Okay. Okay, this an answer to one of the questions. Okay, the ability of the investigator to produce exactly the data as they become evident to him or her in the field. Okay, this is what you should do. So whenever you go to Penang, if you find some interesting things, okay, so you just make, uh, you have to make some notations. Okay, so what does it mean? Fidelity. Fidelity means the ability of the investigator to produce exactly the data as they become evident to him or her in the field. And the most fidelity, the medium with the most fidelity is audio and video recording. Yeah. Okay, and among the less fidelity is field notes. Okay, why? Because you cannot trust the memory, so you trust by yourself. Yeah. Okay, so by the end of your jogging session, so you have certain KPIs. Yeah. Okay, you have the KPIs. So in that case, you try to complete. So fidelity is the ability of the investigator to produce exactly the data as they become evidence to him or her in the field. Yeah. So the most fidelity is audio, video recordings, and the less fidelity is the field note. Yeah. Okay, this is the meaning of fidelity, the degree of exactness with which something is copied or reproduced. Okay, so in Rukun Negara, we follow closely, you know, what is needed, especially uh, based on what you've been told before. Okay. There are a few ways to record interview data. So you have taping the record, whether it is audio or video, and then to take notes or to take field notes. Okay. Or the other way, the other approach is to write down as much as you can remember soon after the interview. Okay, why? Because after that you might get asked, to uh, 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 to give mark or to interview about something else. Okay, so we have a look at the first one first, to tape records. What are the strengths and what are the limitations? Okay, to tape the record, the strength is interview can listen to improve uh, his interview skills. So that means that interviewer can listen, yeah, because it is taped, so you can uh, listen to it later. Okay, and the limitation is respondent feels uneasy. So whenever you try to tape record, yeah, so you have to wait for a while in order for them to make it comfortable. Okay, so the second approach is to take notes. It is useful when mechanical recording is not feasible. Okay, but it is very, very relevant, very, very important for you to take this. Yeah. Okay. The strength of taking note is it is useful when mechanical recording is not feasible, and the limitation is that not everything said can be recorded. You probably have to um, have teaching at that time. Okay, so you need to organize your time clearly. Yeah. So, and of course, to take notes, yeah, during lecture of the other person. So you feel good about it. Yeah. Okay. However, you need to remember that not everything said can be recorded. Okay, to write down as much as can be remembered soon after the interview. So the strength is it is useful when it is not possible to video or to audio record the interview. Okay, sometimes you got told that you cannot interview or you cannot tape the conversation. Okay, the limitation is not everything can be remembered. All right, so this is the tape recording versus note taking. So tape recording preserves natural language, objective record, interviewers' contribution also recorded, and data can be reanalyzed later. There could be some recorder bias or interview interferences. So that means you got distracted because of that. And status of idea recorded is questionable. Yeah. Now it is your turn to read the topic in order to prepare to get the right answer for your quiz today. Okay, thank you very much.